What if I told you the Roman Empire never died? It just changed uniforms? Because according to one of the most explosive theories in modern history, the same bloodlines that ruled ancient Rome may still be ruling today, not with swords, but with bank accounts. And not from a palace, but from inside the Vatican Bank, the most secretive financial institution on earth. Think about it. An empire that controlled half the world doesn't just vanish, it evolves, it hides, it survives. And tonight we're following the trail that suggests Rome's most powerful families didn't fall. They simply slipped into the shadows, traded emperors for popes, and built a financial empire so protected, so untouchable, that no government on earth can audit it. If this theory is true, then the longest-running empire in human history has been sitting in plain sight for 2,000 years, still pulling strings, still choosing winners, still controlling capital from behind the walls of the Vatican. Let's step into the part of history they never wanted you to see. To even explore this theory, you have to step outside the textbook version of history. Because the fall of Rome in 476 AD, some historians argue it wasn't a dramatic collapse, but more of a slow transformation. When Europe was being torn apart by invasions, one institution not only survived, it expanded: the Roman Catholic Church. Why did kingdoms crumble, emperors vanish, and borders melt while the church grew in influence? One explanation historians propose: Rome's most strategic families didn't disappear. They adapted. They shifted from political power to religious influence, which was safer, more stable, and far harder to challenge in a chaotic world. This isn't secret knowledge. Medieval records openly show major Roman families moving into papal politics, church administration, and financial stewardship. Not suspicious, just smart. Fast forward to 1929. Italy signs the Lateran Treaty and creates the modern Vatican City. Part of that agreement included a massive settlement, 750 million lire in cash, plus 1 billion in state bonds. This instantly turned the Vatican into one of the most financially independent microstates in the world. No conspiracy, this is public record. Then in 1942, right in the middle of World War II, Pope Pius X founded the Institute for the Works of Religion, better known as the Vatican Bank. Official purpose: support religious and charitable missions. Unofficial speculation from researchers: this was the moment the church formalized a financial system that had been building for centuries. It's one of the only banks on earth where the head of the church is the sole authority, not illegal, not secret. Just extremely unique. And here's the rumor that sparks the biggest debates among historians. Never proven, never confirmed. Some writers claim early internal policies limited long-term record-keeping, which, if true, would make oversight extremely difficult. Not saying it happened, not saying it didn't. Just saying it's one of the most controversial questions in modern church history. When you put these pieces together, the survival of Rome's elite families, the rise of the church, the creation of a sovereign state, and a bank with unusual autonomy, you get a picture that makes people ask, did Rome really fall? Or did it simply change its operating system? One thing is certain: power didn't vanish, it evolved. So, who held the reins of influence after Rome's transformation? The answer lies with families who never left the city, the so-called Black Nobility. These are ancient Roman aristocratic bloodlines that remained loyal to the papacy after the fall of the Papal States in 1870. For centuries, they were the gatekeepers of Vatican influence, blending politics, religion, and social power in ways that still fascinate historians today. At the top of this elite circle are two families whose names echo through a millennium of Roman history: the Orsini and the Colonna. The Orsini family alone produced 5 popes and 34 cardinals, an extraordinary record of influence. According to family legend, they even trace their ancestry back to the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the line of Augustus and Caligula. Most historians treat this as symbolic, a way to legitimize their medieval status. But legends like this spark curiosity. Could fragments of Rome's old power truly have survived in these families? For centuries, the Orsini and Colonna were locked in intense rivalry. Their battles shaped Roman politics for generations, alternating between strategic alliances, fierce competition, and political maneuvering. In 1511, a papal bull officially ended their feud. Then in 1571, the heads of both families married nieces of Pope Sixtus V, creating a remarkable union. Publicly, this was a truce, but viewed through the lens of influence, it was more like a strategic merger. Two rival powers recognized that they could wield more subtle, far-reaching control by pooling resources, not on the streets, but in the church's expanding financial and political apparatus. The lesson: real power often moves quietly, behind closed doors. Territory can be taken by armies, but influence over wealth, institutions, and social networks is much harder to challenge. We're uncovering stories buried for centuries, connecting historical events, family strategies, and church politics. All documented, all real, and all open to interpretation. The question isn't whether these families existed, it's how much their influence shaped the structures of modern Rome and the Vatican, and that's just the beginning. The next sections reveal how these dynasties might have translated centuries of social influence into the financial networks we see today. If a secret financial empire exists, how does it operate? It would need a system built on plausible deniability and a network of disposable assets. And the history of the Vatican Bank in the 20th century reads like a masterclass in exactly that. In this view, the scandals that rock the IOR aren't signs of failure. They're proof the system is working as intended. Take the case of Michele Sindona. In the 1970s, he was a top financial advisor to the Vatican, with deep ties to both the church and organized crime. When his financial empire, built with Vatican money, collapsed, the church reportedly lost millions. Sindona was convicted of fraud and later died from cyanide poisoning in prison. The official story paints him as a rogue fraudster. But was he a rogue agent, or was he a manager of a high-risk portfolio who became a liability? When a covert project fails, the project manager is often the first to be liquidated. Then came the most infamous scandal of all. Roberto Calvi, chairman of Italy's Banco Ambrosiano, known as God's banker for his close ties to the IOR, his bank's largest shareholder, Calvi built a labyrinth of offshore accounts to move vast sums of money. When Italian authorities closed in, Banco Ambrosiano collapsed under a debt of around $1.5 billion. Shortly after, in 1982, Roberto Calvi's body was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets filled with bricks and cash. The initial ruling was suicide, but the scene was dripping with symbolism. Calvi was a member of the illegal P2 Masonic Lodge, whose members sometimes called themselves the Black Friars. Forensic analysis later suggested Calvi couldn't have climbed the scaffolding himself, leading police to reclassify his death as a murder. Despite multiple trials, no one was ever convicted. Was Calvi's death a suicide, or was it a public execution and a brutal warning to anyone else thinking of breaking the code of silence? From this perspective, Sindona and Calvi weren't the masterminds. They were the regional managers, the front men, the disposable assets. Their job was to generate profit and provide a layer of insulation. When they failed or became a threat, they were removed from the board permanently. The men who died were not the true power. They were the public face of a system designed to protect those who remain in the shadows. For decades, the Vatican Bank wasn't just secretive. It was a financial black box operating on its own planet. No audits, no transparency, no real oversight. And according to investigators, that vacuum was the perfect breeding ground for political deals, personal fortunes, and money flowing in directions nobody could fully explain. But then the 2000s hit, and the outside world started demanding receipts. In 2009, the Vatican Bank found itself under investigation for money laundering. 3 years later, JP Morgan abruptly shut down its account after 1.5 billion euros passed through in just 18 months, with almost no paperwork. And then came the headline that made even seasoned reporters go, "Wait, what?" A senior accountant, Monsignor Nunzio Scarano, was arrested for allegedly trying to smuggle $20 million in cash into Italy. Suitcases. Literal suitcases. The old "we answer to no one" model was cracking. Then came the plot twist nobody saw coming. the election of Pope Francis in 2013. Overnight, the Vatican branded itself as the new champion of transparency. A poor church for the poor. Accounts frozen, thousands shut down, external auditors brought in, the first ever annual reports released. And when profits tanked, the message was simple. See, we're cleaning the house. In 2014, Francis created the Secretariat for the Economy, a move that effectively took financial power away from clergy and handed it to professionals. The world cheered. Headlines called it a revolution. But here's the uncomfortable question our theory raises. Was it really reform or survival? No institution lasts 2,000 years by being stubborn. It lasts by shape-shifting. Francis's reforms could be seen not as surrendering control, but preserving it, streamlining operations, ditching risky baggage, and re-entering the modern financial system with fresh credibility. The public saw transparency. Insiders might have seen a strategic reset. And then, the game shifted again. In August 2025, former Vatican auditor Libero Meloni claimed he discovered a secret tool capable of altering SWIFT transactions after they were sent. No proof, no documents. The Vatican called the allegation baseless, but the timing raised eyebrows. 2 months later, Pope Leo XIV reversed one of Francis's major reforms. The Vatican Bank lost its exclusive control over investments, and other departments, like APSA, which quietly manages billions in real estate, were suddenly free to use external banks again. The official explanation? Efficiency. The unofficial interpretation? Diversification. A deliberate spread of assets across a wider, harder-to-trace ecosystem. A reset of the old machine, but now sleeker, smarter, and better insulated. So yes, reforms happened. But were they a transformation or camouflage? Because as the dust settles, one thing looks unmistakably clear. The game never stopped. It just upgraded. So, where does this trail leave us? We've followed a path from the ashes of the Roman Empire to the modern facade of the Vatican Bank. We've seen how ancient families like the Orsini and Colonna could have transitioned from feudal lords to silent partners in the world's most secretive bank. We've seen a history of scandals and murders that look less like failures and more like a ruthless corporate strategy. And we've seen an era of celebrated reform that now looks suspiciously like a strategic pivot to modernize an empire's operations. The Vatican Bank today reports healthy profits and boasts of its ethical compliance. It presents itself as a clean, modern institution. But is this the truth or the most sophisticated PR campaign in history? The central claim that ancient Roman families secretly controlled this institution remains a conspiracy theory. There is no public document, no smoking gun that proves it. It's a narrative built from whispers, suspicious deaths, and the unsettling gap between public statements and private actions. So I'll leave you with a final question. Are the Black Nobility just a legend? Or are they the hidden hand guiding one of the most powerful financial empires on Earth? An empire that never fell, but simply learned to rule from the shadows? Has the recent era of reform truly cleansed the institution? Or has it just forced the ancient empire to become more discreet, more sophisticated, and more powerful than ever? The answer may lie buried deep within the vaults of the Vatican, in a place where history's darkest secrets are kept. What do you think? Is this theory far-fetched, or does it connect the dots in a way the official history can't? Share your own ideas in the comments below. Let's continue the investigation together. And if you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell, because we are just scratching the surface of the secrets hidden in the architecture of power.